becoming pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I thought those couple videos might be a fun way to start off here.
Just a couple?
Did I ever show you Kobayashi?
No.
Oh, this one's so fun. This would be a good one to start out with. This is more relevant for the law of diminishing marginal utility, which apparently Kobayashi doesn't get. Well, of course, we don't have Chrome, so we'll see if I can do anything.
We have Chrome right there.
I know, but it's not opening. It's,
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
this thing is jacked.
Thanks.
It doesn't get all the. There we go. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, Kobayashi's the champion eater. I'm going to fast forward to the spot. He's going to take down a pizza here.
In a minute.
It's a full, large pizza. Clock's behind him there, 27, 26.
I heard he has jaw arthritis. That's
it. All right, so apparently the law of diminishing marginal utility does not apply to Kobayashi. So he's one of our freaks of nature. This next one is just to contrast with our Monopoly that we're hitting today. This is from I Love Lucy. It's really on perfect competition. So since a lot of you don't probably remember, how many people know I Love Lucy at all? Okay, a few hands. Oh, good, quite a few hands actually. All right. So these two are friends, but they're in a little bit of a fight, and so this is their little battle with running a restaurant.
I'd like to report a missing grave.
This isn't a bar, it's a diner. We serve food here.
Food? Yeah, how about some meat? Yeah, right on here, son. I'll drink till that.
Right over here.
Right here.
Mister.
Yeah, but we're trying to get him over here, not drive him away.
Best hamburgers in town, 15 cents.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Look, mister, 14 cents.
Wow. Well, I'd like to save a penny right here.
Right now, we're going to pull you around. Mister, 13 cents. Look, mister, 10 cents. 10 cents. 5 cents. 4. 3, 2, 1. What's the hamburgers?
Are you losing your mind?
I want them to get it.
1 cent hamburgers. I'd like 100 hamburgers.
I'm sorry, we're all out of hamburgers.
All right, so you can see things work a little different when we don't have barriers to entry. We start to see prices move in the direction for consumers. And today, we're looking at monopoly. And here's the difference when they have a little bit of power. We're going to look at airlines and the type of power. And I want you guys to think about how they got their power. We talked about barriers to entry last time. I think we were on Viagra or something, if I remember right. Yep, we get to get influenced by Mike's Mountain Dew first.
Unleash your refreshing citrus kick. Do the do.
Welcome aboard. It's 2007, and we are more committed to your safety than ever. And that's why we'd like you to pay careful attention to this important safety information. First, please make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened. Seatbelts can be purchased for $5. To fasten, insert the metal fitting into the buckle and tighten the buckle by pulling the loose end away from you. To release, purchase a release flap for $7. Now I know what you're thinking. We've never paid for seatbelts before. Once we've reached our cruising altitude, your flight attendant may or may not go down the aisle with snacks. If she chooses to, each passenger will be given a single peanut. Lavatories are located at the front and the rear of the airport. Please take a moment to look at your safety pamphlet. The charge for looking at this pamphlet is $3. The charge for looking at this pamphlet and putting it back quickly is $4. Should there be a rapid change in cabin pressure, oxygen masks will automatically drop from the compartment above your seat, free of charge. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. And to start the flow of oxygen, pay a flight attendant $75.63. As always, exact changes. Now I know that some of you are still concerned about getting there safely. Enjoy your flight.
Have you seen the
All right, so good old monopoly power. What can we do to avoid that? Okay, so what does all this power do to our market? Let's see, where's my black? All right, let me get rid of this. So, power came from what thing here? We had monopoly. Looks like I grabbed the wrong marker again. You know, I feel like I'm going to revive this thing somehow, but I probably won't. 3 characteristics.
Yes.
One seller.
Or did it internet out?
Barriers to entry. In theory, it wouldn't be hard to get out. You know, we had free entry and exit. The monopolist just wouldn't want to exit. So it's really just barriers to entry on that part. Number 2?
Price setter?
Price setter, yeah. How does he get that?
Because he's not a price taker.
All right, so this was a homogeneous product. Because there's only one product, there's only one show in town, so it's a single product monopolist. We'll make that distinction a little bit later. So this is a single product monopolist, for starters. So there's just one product, so it's kind of homogeneous by default. All right, so if we think back to Chapter 12, Perfect Competition, and we got the market and the representative firm, we've got the market demand curve. What was the story for the representative firm? What did we call them? A price taker. But now the monopoly is the only show in town. So they don't face a demand curve because they're taking the price. The monopolist is a price maker. So I kind of draw an X through this because the monopolist is the market. So the monopolist is going to face the downward sloping market demand curve. That's the one kind of first important distinction.
So back to the basic thing that we talked about with the HIV or with the AIDS bill with the body.
Let's get down to the details of the model first before we get there. I mean, I don't know where your question was going, but
I was just saying that's what he did. He turned that.
Yeah. So you have monopoly power if you're a single seller in the only market. So you have this downward sloping demand curve. Okay. So what about marginal revenue? What about marginal revenue? With the price taker, this is supposed to be an X. It almost looks like a supply demand curve. So make sure you're like, no. The marginal revenue curve was equal to the demand curve because of the price taking behavior. So what does marginal revenue look like over here? So let's say that this endpoint is $10. Okay? And then let's just go 9, 8, 7. And we'll even go down to 6, whatever. We don't have to be perfect here. And then at 9 units, we have a quantity of 1. At $8, you guys get on all right? Can you hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So then just mute your microphone when you hover over the screen. You'll see a little microphone in the lower left-hand corner. There you go. And then if you do want to talk, just unmute it, and then even if I'm not looking at you, feel free to just interrupt me if you need to. All right, so at $7, we have a linear demand curve. Let's say it's 3 units. And finally at $6, 4 units. Okay, so what is the revenue generated by the first unit sold? So if we think of quantity, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go down to 4, marginal revenue. What is the revenue generated by the first unit sold? According to this information, first unit's $9, right? So to sell the first unit, I offer $9, I sell 1 unit. Total revenue is price times quantity. 1 times 9 is 9, so marginal revenue is $9. What about at 2 units? 16? Marginal's 8. So what is 16? Total revenue. So I get 2 times 8 is 16. So 7. Well, I've got all kinds of fun going on here already. So total revenue, maybe we should do a total revenue column. Price times quantity gave me $9. Price times quantity 2 times 8 now gave me $16. So price equals marginal revenue. Is it 8 or what is the marginal revenue? 7, right? So it's no longer down. I don't get it. Didn't I sell it for $8? I heard somebody say 8 earlier. I sold it for $8, didn't I? How did that sucker not bring me in $8 worth of revenue? How could it be 7? What's the catch? Change in total revenue, right? If you go back to that formula. But so if we look at the change, if we kind of just are equation driven, like I know all of you are, you just love those equations. You had marginal revenue equal change in total revenue over the change in quantity, right? That's what we did back in perfect competition was this. Change in total revenue is 8. So I'm with you, yes, that's the formula, but I don't get it. I sold the unit for $8. Why isn't the marginal revenue $8? Or is it? What went on? There's something deeper going on here. Does everybody agree that I sold it for $8?
Yeah.
So how is my marginal incremental revenue? Sorry, this is 7. Saw that once I snuck up there. How is my incremental revenue 7 when I sold it for 8? The price was 8, but the marginal revenue, the quantity is 1. We're going to a quantity of 2. So the total quantity here is 2. It's a bit of a puzzle, isn't it, Matt?
The demand for the second quantity is the demand for the first.
Okay, so the demand for the second unit, would you say that that's 8? Yes. So I like that. You're touching on the right thing here, but I haven't heard anybody nail it. Why is the incremental revenue 7 when I sold it for 8?
You're selling 2 at 8.
Good. Which means what?
You're not selling 1 at 9 and 1 at 8.
There you go. Right? We didn't sell the first one when we only sold 1, we were able to get $9. But in order to sell 2, I had to drop the price, not only for the second unit, but for the previous one I sold 2. That's the catch. That's the thing we got to kind of bite into here, is that the first unit and the second unit, both those units sell for $8 now, which means I effectively lost $1 on the first one, but I gained 8 on the next one. So if we really bite this apart, the marginal revenue is this price, but then I lost this little buck here. I kind of lost this little chunk here. And so my revenue generated by the second unit, taking all of that into account, was not $8, but 7. Third unit, marginal revenue at the third. Marginal revenue at third. 5. Here are 5. I see a head shaking. 5, yes. So if I want to sell 3 units, now that I'm this monopolist with power, I can sell 3 units. I have the ability to change my price. In order to sell the units, the consumer is still king, right? Can the monopolist force you to buy their product?
No.
No. So the consumer is still king in the market system, even in the face of a monopolist. So the monopolist has to drop the price in order to sell 3 units. So they have to drop it to $7. Which means my total revenue is what? 21, right? So $21, which is our 3 times 7. So this is 3 times $7 is my $21 worth of revenue, which then means that the third unit, given all those circumstances, technically added, back to thinking this way, the $5. So we've got a 7 here, and now we've got a 5 here. So graphically, we put at a unit of 3, we go up to 5, which I hadn't drawn, and we put a big fat dot. If we keep doing that exercise, you're going to end up with a marginal revenue curve that looks like this. The marginal revenue curve is not equal to the demand curve with the monopolist. So there's the graphical representation of marginal revenue. All right, so let's put that little note here. So note, the single price, monopolist. Now, I said product earlier. They had a single product that was related to it being a homogeneous product. They didn't offer multiple products. But we're also the textbook uses this language, a single price monopolist, a monopoly that doesn't have the ability to charge different prices for different units, which is something we will do later on in the chapter. But for starters, this situation comes about if we have a single price monopoly. So the single price monopolist must lower price to sell more units. By the way, that's just law of demand, back to our test we just took. All right, that's kind of no duh. There's nothing too sophisticated going on there. Must lower price to sell more units, not only for the extra unit, the marginal unit, but all the previous ones. So not only for the extra unit, but all previous ones too. But all previous ones too. Might not hurt, I usually don't lay it out quite like this, but might not be bad to think about the demand curve and add a price column onto it. It doesn't matter if you put it over here or here, but since we brought it to that level, at 0 units we had a price of 10. That was our choke price. Nobody's going to buy them at 10. In order to sell 1, we had to drop it to 9, 8, 7, 6. With our schedule goggles here to match them up.
What's a necessity?
If whatever the good is, it's just going to be whatever the demand is for it. So that'll just affect the elasticity of demand.
If households usually need electricity if there's only one electric provider.
Mm-hmm. That just affects the elasticity of demand, right? If it's a necessity, so that won't matter too much for this thing that we're doing here. Okay, so let's clean up the monopoly with kind of a fresh graph here. So this thing's basically the basic monopoly model. The only innovation we're really making is with that demand curve and marginal revenue curve. Now, when you draw this one, bear with me for a sec. Draw any old demand curve. I really don't care how steep it is, but have it go all the way down to the horizontal axis. And we did this exercise once before. You remember finding the midpoint? We said, oh, it's about here. And if we went up to the demand curve, I don't want to actually monkey up this graph here, but if I go up to the demand curve, what was true about the elasticity of demand right at that point? It was equal to 1. Unitary elasticity. So that was our break point. Now it's going to serve something different for us. It's going to serve an anchoring point for how the marginal revenue curve works. Marginal revenue curve is twice as steep and goes right to that point. Yes?
Even though the demand curve goes out farther, if they produce anywhere past the midpoint.
Yeah. So I'll motivate that here in a sec. So if I drew the revenue mountain, which I didn't leave myself very much room, I wasn't planning on actually drawing it, so you guys can visualize in your head here. What was happening at the elasticity of demand with our mountain of money, our revenue mountain? It was the maximum, right? It was at the tippy top. what is the marginal revenue at that point? What is the incremental amount of revenue at that tippy point? If I just do one more little unit, how much revenue does it add? 0. That's what this is telling us right here. At that quantity, revenue, money mountain, is at the tippy point, meaning that a small adjustment in quantity doesn't add anything else to the cash register. Can marginal revenue be negative? Can marginal revenue be negative? Is it possible for us to do this?
Yes.
Yes. Why? How can you relate that to Revenue Mountain? What was happening to Revenue Mountain? It was going down. Yeah. So as I produced past that point, when demand was relatively inelastic, this range of the demand curve, Revenue Mountain was on the downside, which means extra units were taking away revenue, i.e. they were negative. So the actual marginal revenue curve, and I'll try to draw this quite a few times. You won't see this drawn always in the textbook. It extends into the below the horizontal axis, reminding us that it can be negative. And the monopolist would never operate there. So a lot of times in your textbook, they're just going to show you this graph. Why would the monopolist ever be here? Why can we kind of ignore that? We can theoretically put it there, but why would the monopolist never be there? What would they do?
Shut down.
No, they wouldn't shut down. They would just raise price. Yeah. They control the whole show. So they're not subject to competitors screwing them over. They just jack up the price, right? Because they're the only show in town. So for all intents and purposes, the monopolist would never be operating here because they are the only show in town. They would just raise the price. As they raise the price, revenues climb, costs would actually fall because I'm actually producing less. So it's like a no-brainer. So we, a lot of times, won't see that drawn on some of your graphs. So remember that. But I'll keep it up here for now. All right. Even with monopoly power, can the monopolist escape the law of diminishing marginal product? No, nobody can escape it. That's what makes it a law, which gives rise to a J-shaped, upward sloping marginal cost curve.
So, where would you want to produce that then? On the
Hold on. Yep, that's what I'm going to throw back to you. So how does a firm maximize profit? Wyatt. Jennifer, how does a firm maximize profit? Nolan, how does a firm maximize profit? Oh, 1,000. 2 1,000. Natasha, how does a firm maximize profit? No. Keith, how does a firm maximize profit? No, but you're a heck of a lot closer than you need to be. Addie, how does a firm maximize profit? Loving it, loving it. Addie's got it. Keith, how does a firm maximize profit? Addie, how does a firm maximize profit?
Produce the quantity where the revenue generated by the last unit equals the cost of the last unit.
Keith, how does a firm maximize profit?
Produce the quantity where marginal revenue is.
Good. Zakasha, how does a firm maximize profit? No. Keith, how does a firm maximize profit? Listen. Zakasha, how does a firm maximize profit? Keith, how does a firm maximize profit? Good. Yeah, let me just help a little bit here. How does a firm maximize profit? Love it. Produce the quantity where revenue is marginal cost. Nolan, how does a firm maximize profit? Nice. Jennifer, how does a firm maximize profit? Nice. Wyatt, how does a firm maximize profit?
Produce quantity where the marginal return is.
Marginal revenue. I prefer the word, but I'll live with that. All right, so you guys got to know that just right off the top of your head every single stinking time. It's just good to know. It's going to make this stuff come a lot easier. So the monopolist, similar to Farmer Ted, Tom, Dick, and Harry, produces the quantity where the revenue generated by the last unit, i.e. the marginal revenue curve, is just equal to the cost of the last unit. That quantity maximizes profit. How much money is this monopolist making?
A lot, all of it.
A lot? All of it? All the money in the world?
No, not all the money.
Can you calculate that for me here, or do we need some more information? More information. What could we use? Prices, yes, and quantities, but what there's the cost. What type of cost would be really handy?
Average total cost.
Average total cost, right? So that one's not up here. So let's just put one in. Remember that you have to obey the rules of Chapter 11. It's bowl-shaped, bottoms out somewhere. By the way, there's no connection here. It looks like I almost made this connect here. No big deal. You can put this anywhere. So no correlation with that. Goes up, average total cost curve. Colin, who are you talking to? Oh, you guys are both in the same room. Well, see, we can't have table talk between. That's be like, so I might call you on that. You're not going to lose any points, but cool. All right. So, how do we find the price and cost associated with producing this quantity, this profit maximizing quantity? Let's go ahead and call it 100 units just for fun. So we got some numbers here. So we've determined that we should make 100 units. What price should we charge? All right, Chisholm says go up to the demand and hang a left. Why not charge the highest price people are willing and able to pay? Where is that information? The demand curve. That's what it tells us, right? Shows the prices people are willing to pay for various units. So if I go up to the demand curve, hang a left, I now have the optimal price that the monopolist should charge. So profits are equal to total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue, price times quantity, minus total cost, which we could think of as average total cost times quantity. And it's addy time. What can I do with this equation? Factor the Q out. I get price minus average total cost. So in other words, all the stuff that we did in Chapter 12 with perfect competition, it's all applying here, right? This is the same old profit. Nothing changing here with calculating the profits. To calculate the average total cost curve of producing 100 units, I go up to the average total cost curve, hang a left, and I've got the average total cost right here. And what's this rectangle? Profit, right? Difference between price and average total cost. If we look back to the equation, the difference between those two times the quantity that I'm producing, the 100 units, gives me some money of that amount. Economic profit greater than 0. We could calculate the areas of that rectangle and get the exact amount if we had numbers in here. I'm going to hold off on doing that, but if this was $13 and this was $9, 13 minus 9 is 4 times 100, 400 bucks, right? So visually it looks like that. Now, enter, enter, enter. But what happens when the little flies come in and the light inside is signaling, enter, it's really fun, we're making lots of money. Boom, boom, yeah, there's a piece of glass here, right, which economists call barriers to entry. So the fly keeps buzzing around, they'd love to get in there, but they can't quite talk to their politician enough to let them in or whatever. So the monopolist is protected through these barriers that have been created. They've been created either by the monopolist, maybe they have some special rights to resources that are necessary. They've been created by government through issuing patents or license or other things. So maybe the monopolist has been really successful at raising regulations. I got to talk to a millionaire, I don't think he's a billionaire, but a millionaire guy that does oil rigs in Kansas and Oklahoma. I think they have most of their stuff. And got to talking about the oil business, and you know, there was a lot of issues, if you guys have been following environmental stuff, with fracking, right? So potential environmental stuff. Now, how do you think the oil guy that I was talking to felt about fracking? With extra regulations, you know, he's in the oil business. You think he was anti-regulation?
Yes.
Good answer, but no. He was all for the regulations. Yeah, he wanted to protect the environment. Why would he be all pro-regulation if he's an existing oil man? Makes it harder for other people to get in, exactly. So what you'll find is that the existing oil people who are already millionaires, do you think they can handle another accountant to handle a regulation or another safety measure where everybody's got to wear goggles and wear a hazmat suit if they're going to take oil? Do you think that oil guy who's multi-million-dollar business, do you think he can handle more regulations, especially knowing that that's exactly what will keep the little flies from, that's the piece of glass that he's got up? Absolutely, right? So that's the interesting twist that we have with what economists call sometimes cronyism. Existing companies might have incentive to tell the politicians, yeah, protect the environment, even if they think it's a load of crap, that there's global warming. The actual oil man might be saying, yeah, well, you know, we got to be safer. There's a lot of ways we could make the job site safer if we did this, if we erected fences, if we did, you know, blah, 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 blah. Because the more barriers they can put up, the more they can keep new entrants into the market out.
What is that guy's name?
You know, I don't even know his last name. His daughter took some riding lessons with my wife. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of oil people around Kansas City, and well, one of them that is a billionaire, I think he did regular oil too. He just donated now $2 million to Ottawa University. John, now I'm drawing a blank. He kind of started small and built his way up. Anyway, so he's donated a lot of money to Ottawa University too. So I'm not saying they're all that way, but my point is, where are the incentives at? They have incentives to erect these barriers to keep competition out. All right, any other questions or comments on the basic setup for monopoly here? All right, so let me put down that note here about economic profits and the signal and little flies hitting the glass. We've got, can run dual exhaust here. All right. So, note number one. This is both the short run and long run prediction for monopoly.
That goes with this graph?
Yeah, this graph here, remember how we kind of did short run, long run? There could be profits, but then there was entry. So this picture ends up being the long run picture too. So due to the key part here is that due to barriers to entry, we expect economic profits to be greater than 0.
Will they ever be less than?
Less a loss. Could there be a loss? Not if they have full pricing power. So if something, they would just start to basically shut down. If there was a huge amount of fixed costs maybe imposed by the government, there could be a loss. That might be an example of a short-term loss. But then they would make adjustments over time. So yeah, I think there could be a short-term loss, maybe due to a fine or a change in regulation that was a huge fixed cost up front. Could be something like that.
So like, I know they're not monopolies, but like before when they're say there's something that new technology comes out that they're
Right.
on it, and then it just basically kills it, the whole thing.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want this to be too strong. Long run does not mean forever. So Bo was bringing up if there's a new technology. We talked about cell phones and compared to the home phone before. So note number 2, long run does not mean forever. Forever. But it does mean all resources could be varied and we wouldn't see a change, but that might not be true forever. So a change in technology could allow for some substitutes to evolve. For the monopoly. And frankly, the monopolies that last the longest are the ones that are supported by the government, typically. Because all other firms that start to get control eventually get squashed by something new coming along. And so this is an important concept. Now let me push you on that a little bit. As a new substitute comes around into the market, how would that transform this graph? What would a new substitute start to do?
Demand would decrease.
Okay.
With that, would our marginal revenue decrease?
Yeah, so you could think about this decreasing. We could do a little parallel shift, perhaps. What else might it do? So that's correct. That's one thing that it could do is shift, kind of shift in, which this whole thing would shift in. Would it get steeper? Would it get steeper or flatter? Flatter. So you're right. You're good in thinking about the elasticity. But as we start to get more substitutes available, if this guy jacks price, everybody says, see ya, right? There's a big response from a price change if there's available substitutes. If DirecTV jacks up their price too much, or the local cable television, and now we have satellite and internet streaming and other things, everybody says, see ya, right? And so the elasticity of demand is going to tend to be flatter. And we're going to see that come up when we get into the next chapter too. So that's why I wanted to tee you up a little bit for that. All right. Other questions or comments so far? All right. So how is the Monopolist doing with some of our benchmarks that we did before? Is the Monopolist being productively efficient. Does this picture show production efficiency? So production efficiency. So we can kind of think of, kind of like what we did with perfect competitions. Think about conclusions from Monopoly for the long run. Number one, PE, question mark. Do we have production efficiency? What did we need to have production efficiency? Flip, flip, flip. It's in your notes. Go back to...
You can't make the word one without doing that.
That is our definition of efficiency, and it was production efficiency with the production possibilities frontier, and then I made a modification. Jake? Jake, what did you have?
I didn't hear what she just said.
Oh.
So I don't know.
She said where you have to give up something to get something else, which was the edge of the production possibilities frontier. But I threw another modification when we looked at perfect competition, the conclusions from perfect competition. You should have it in your notes there. What was the thing going on with production efficiency? Yeah. Good. Average total cost was minimized. So in perfect competition, we saw average total cost minimized. If this is the long run situation, are we operating at minimum average total cost? No, that goes on right here. So the the productively efficient quantity, if you guys want to do this on your notes, and I'm going to go down here a little ways, QPE, the productively efficient quantity, is right here. The monopolist, let's go ahead and put a little subscript M for the monopolist. The monopolist is only producing 100. So are they overproducing or underproducing relative to what is productively efficient? Underproducing. So they're not producing enough is kind of the lesson to think about there. So when we get into a situation where a company has too much market power, they're not making enough. Allocative efficiency. So I guess let me put the no here first. So productive efficiency, no, not at minimum of average total cost. QM is less than what is productively efficient. We have an underproduction of the. It's underproduced. Allocative efficiency. We got that going on here. Allocative efficiency. Yes? So what was the condition necessary for allocative efficiency? Marginal revenue equals marginal cost? No, not quite. It turned out to be part of that, but it wasn't the revenue. It was more general than that. Marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Well, wait a second, Russ. I don't see a marginal benefit curve up here. Yes, I do? No, I don't. Which one is it? The demand curve is the marginal benefit curve. So even though it doesn't show up on your homework problem or your test or whatever, this is the type of stuff we need to start remembering way back from chapter 2 and 3. The demand curve is the marginal benefit curve. And so allocative efficiency occurred when marginal benefit was equal to what? Marginal cost. Is that going on here? No, because marginal benefit equals marginal cost right here at the intersection of these two things is QAE. So the allocatively efficient point is not occurring either. No, not at quantity where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. The market monopolist quantity is less than what is allocatively efficient. Underproduction again.
So if we said the monopolist had a set of morals, where should he be placing his product price and production?
Well, it depends on your definition of morality. I mean, I think the monopolist is doing some good for society by maximizing profits. So some might argue that the moral position is right on here. So that we'll pick up in business ethics class and maybe general ethics. So there's nothing maybe immoral about being here, depending on what your moral code is. All right, so we got this. What else? What's true about profits then? Number 3, as far as conclusions. Profits equal 0? No. It's what we already wrote on the board there. I just kind of want to put it in these summary points. Economic profit is greater than 0 in the long run. So these are kind of long run conclusions. I'll put the LR up here. Economic profit's greater than 0. Resources are being employed in places that are greater than their, or that are being paid something more than what they need to in alternative uses. So that's not good from an efficiency standpoint. All right, so on our conclusion list, we've got suck, and more suck. So what is the prescription? What should we do to fix things? Produce more? How are we going to do that? Is the monopolist going to do it on their own because of their moral code? No. Okay, so they're not going to do it on their own. So what might we need to do? Government regulation might be an avenue, right? Now, we also talked about something maybe that we could do also if we could somehow encourage this to happen, right? I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. It depends on the circumstances, but you know, can substitutes be developed somehow by some profit-minded company or individual out there? All right, so government regulation is an avenue that we've seen this thing go. We're going to talk about that next. So, government regulation with a natural monopoly. I'm throwing 2 things at you now. I'm going to change something up on you a little bit by introducing what we call a natural monopoly. All right, so let's draw a nice big picture. And maybe we're thinking about the, I don't know, the good electricity or something here. So one of our utilities. And let's say that the average total cost curve looks like this. It's supposed to not have a flat spot. That's supposed to be nice and curvy. All right, and then our marginal cost curve is going to follow. So this is kind of a long-run average total cost. Since it's going down, 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 what did we call that? Economies of scale. Good, awesome. So when costs fall, when I increase the scale of production, we said that there's economies of scale. In other words, it's better from a cost standpoint to be bigger. That's part of why we're calling this a natural monopoly. It's kind of natural to consider having one company because the more you make, the lower the costs are. All right, if we have a long run average total cost curve like this, it very well might look like this if I kept drawing. Maybe something like that. You guys don't need to draw that part. But some sort of bowl-shaped look to it. And the reason I wanted to do that was to think about the marginal cost curve would be coming up and approaching that minimum point. So our marginal cost curve would look something like that. Where it would then cut through the minimum point, all of those properties would still happen. But those dashed lines are kind of not really relevant because our demand curve looks something like this. So draw a demand curve that comes down, cutting through wherever, something looking like that. Not curve, yeah, straight line. The normal, well, for the demand curve, it can just be our normal straight line.
So it's a demand line.
Demand line, yes. But we call it a curve, it just happens to be straight. It's just the way it works. I don't make up the rules on that one. All right, so it can be curvy, but just to keep things simple for principal students, we usually make it a line. Halfway, what is this mark?
Yes.
Marginal revenue, good, so draw that in. It can go below the line, but we can just leave it up. How does the firm maximize profits? Produce quantity where the revenue generated by the last unit is equal to the cost of the last unit. So where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the monopolist is going to produce QM. Just like what we did with the monopoly, they're the only show in town, so they're going to charge the highest price people are willing and able to pay. Let's call it PM. And then, of course, they're going to have these profits based off of the average cost. I'm not going to draw that in this time. Where does allocative efficiency occur? Allocative efficiency. Marginal benefit equals marginal cost. So right here. So now we're the government taking a look at this. Currently, we've got this price of $40 a kilowatt hour going on. And it's outrageous that somehow this company has taken out all their competitors and become the only show in town. So we're going to regulate. What should we do? Price ceiling might be an approach. So we thought, well, $40 is too high. Let's just drop the price, impose a price control of some sort. So that might be one we can explore. What about forcing them to produce this? I mean, currently that monopoly is kicking out 1,000 units of electricity, but let's just force them to do 2,000. Could the government force them to produce Q80?
Yes,
Yes?
but will the average
Which would mean what?
They're losing money.
They're losing money. So could the government force them to lose money?
No.
Yeah, it's called taxes.
Yeah, taxes. So the government could force this company to keep operating for the long run at a consistent loss forever.
No.
No, God bless America, we're not there yet, right? So they would choose, if the government was going to do that, I think they'd just say, government, here you go. Take it, it's yours. Now the government runs it. Can the government run it at a loss? Yes, they do that pretty well in a number of areas, right? So it is possible for the government to run it here, but God bless America, they can't force this business to stay in business and operate at that loss. Question, yeah?
Could they do something similar to a target price in that case, meaning like they would give them the difference?
They might be able to do some sort of subsidies, yes. Yep. They could come up with another scheme like that. But they couldn't force this to happen. So the reason again is right here. At a quantity of 2,000, the price associated with that would be less than the average total cost. So as some of you saw, if price is less than average total cost, there'd be a loss. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna be sustainable in the long haul. All right. So we can't force them to do QAE. If we're going to allow this company to get comfy, what quantity would allow them to earn a normal profit?
What is that line at average total cost and demand?
Average total cost and demand, right? At this quantity, let's call it Q reg for the regulated quantity. At this quantity, the company is earning a normal profit because price is equal to average total cost.
Even though marginal revenue is negative.
Yes, because we've really distorted things by allowing the price to be here at this amount. So the marginal revenue is kind of disappearing with the regulation in place. We're allowing that price to occur, the regulated price. All right, so government regulation. So first of all, a couple things here. Number one, force company to produce QAE, question mark. No, God bless America. Government cannot force a company to lose money. At that point, we'd probably just nationalize electricity. The government would just be the provider of electricity, assuming that they can't force them out and they could exit the market still. So we still have exiting as an option.
The government ran all their normal abilities.
Let me go to Nolan first. Nolan?
Are there government regulations against monopolies though?
Yes. So that's part of what we're doing. So monopolies might have evolved over time because of economies of scale, that the market, mergers and acquisitions, so all of a sudden there's one firm in the market. But the government has antitrust laws to stop that. So you're right. If we allow it to be one company, then we do it through regulation. So it's kind of sometimes called a quasi-government agency. All right, so here's the thing. Here's kind of the rub. Economists might call this a second best solution. Like for society, the allocatively efficient quantity would be ideal. This is farther than this. So given these circumstances, Q-Reg is all right. We still have a company operating it. The company's earning a normal profit. So force company to do that? No. Number 2, force a normal profit? Question mark. Force a normal profit. So the idea here is that government regulates the firm and only allows a normal profit. And of course, we learned last time that that's economic profit equal to 0. No excess abnormal profits. That happens when price equals, so at Q-Reg, price equals average total costs. So it's sometimes called a second best solution. A second best solution because it's in the middle. Ideally,
you're saying this does happen?
Yes, this does happen, yes. So ideally, it'd be nice to figure out how to get to AE, the allocatively efficient quantity. The regulated quantity is somewhere in the middle. So this would be the first best solution if we could do it somehow. But the second best solution is at least better than leaving the monopoly alone, which then gets us QM. All right, any other comments or questions on this so far?
So, can you give us an example of like something that's happening?
Kansas Gas. I mean, all of the utility companies here, they're kind of following this thing. They'll submit their budgets and everything, and kind of have an open book policy with the government to say, oh yeah, okay, I'm looking over things. Yeah, it looks like you're just earning a fair profit, a normal profit, and then they let it go. So yeah, this is definitely an active way of going about it.
What is that supposed to be after the solution?
Because C-U-Z. So cuz C-U-Z. That's my shorthand. I actually invented that, you guys. I don't get credit for this very often, but I learned later that some of you use that in text messaging. But I've been doing that before cell phones were invented, when I was lecturing 20 years ago. So I unfortunately did not get a copyright or a patent or anything, so I can't capitalize on. Think of how rich I could be if I would have did that at the time. But I just thought it was a clever shortcut to help me move things along in class. But, okay. If you're running this company and you need a company car, do you buy the Cadillac or the Chevy, the Malibu? If you're running this company and you need a new desk, do you get the nice solid wood oak desk or the particle board one from Walmart? Oak. If you're buying paper, do you get the nice paper that has the heavy weight to it, that's nice quality? Or do you go to Staples and buy the cheapest ream possible? Nice paper or the cheaper paper? All right, you're starting to get what might be going on here. If you have a zero profit criteria, how do you make money? How does the wolf in sheep's clothing make money when they're under regulation? We get the fluffy stuff, right? So we start to bury it. What does that do to this picture? If we have the Cadillac the nice paper, the oak desk, yeah, the average cost curve is shifting up. As it's shifting up, what's happened to Q-reg? It's drifting, right? It's drifting this direction, and in fact, if you'll bear with me that even though we have a curve, I'm going to use a line, as this thing shifts up, Q-reg is drifting. If we let this company get obnoxious enough, is it possible it could cut through right here? So that we end up with the same outcome we were before. So if the monopolist is able to be creative and not watch the bottom line in terms of minimizing cost, we'll start to have our second best solution drifting away from the ideal and back to the place where we were before. Is a possible outcome of this, where we have good intentions that maybe weren't well thought out, could lead to outcomes that aren't much better than where we were with maybe with the free market. Okay, questions or comments? I'll write that down in a sec, but questions or comments on that? Okay, so note. A big note here. Caddy or Chevy? Oak or particle board?
Like, it's literally the same car.
Literally the same car. You don't know cars very well, huh? Nice paper, heavy paper, right down to the papers and pens here, or cheap paper. So, monopolist, the regulated monopolist has less incentive, possibly no incentive, less incentive to minimize costs under regulation. Might be able to, I'll put in quotes, can make money, make profit by not watching costs.
Maybe business. Phone companies.
What's that?
Phone companies.
Phone company, yeah, all kinds of stuff. Even, I mean, and really a lot of government-run stuff is kind of similar. There's not incentive to watch to minimize our costs. All right, so then just to kind of play back with how this visually works out here, that means that we have an increase in long-run average total cost, a shift up, and Q-reg moves towards the monopoly quantity. Just to kind of jot down visually what's happening here, moving us away from the reason we might have did it in the first place. Okay, now somebody mentioned price ceiling. Oh, question, Bo?
Yeah. So why is the government always put the lowest bidder when they were in paper things? Like NASA always pays for.
Well, so here's what they'll claim, and I've heard this lots of times before. So the question was, why does the government always go to the lowest bidder? A lot of times they'll claim that they've already looked at all the contractors and they are even. Like each contractor met some sort of minimum criteria, and so therefore the cheapest bidder would make the most sense. But in reality, they don't know how to compare apples and apples a lot of times. And so the contractors might be different in their ability to perform and not be late and not screw up and lots of different issues that happen in reality. But that's what they'll claim, is that they've already compared apples and apples. Okay, good. Anything else there? So price ceiling. This price is too high. Wah, wah, wah. How about this price? Does that move us off of QM in this case? Now this is a little bit tricky to watch it, to look at visually. Effectively, the demand curve is no longer this. Are you with me? Because they can't charge those prices by law if the highest price can be is here at 30 or whatever my golf club's at. So the demand curve is now kinked. It goes along here, and then it heads down the other one, because the government doesn't mind if they charge lower prices, right? So this part of the demand curve is still relevant. This part is flat. When this part is flat, what is the marginal revenue to the company effectively? Same thing, it's equal to that price. Good, just like what we learned in perfect competition, this chunk would be flat and equal to marginal revenue. So now, marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. Marginal cost is still down here, so we're going to keep producing until we would get to that point, right? And we'd still be able to make the profit of a little bit. This chunk now would be our profit, because the average total cost would be down here. So there'd still be some profit. Then the politician would say, oh, they're still making profit, gosh darn it. Let's drop it a little bit more, right? And so they could, in theory, drop it to right here to get back to that point. The problem with all this is that in reality, we've got a dynamic market that's changing. And we're going to rely on a politician in Congress to kind of alter the prices and be good at what they're doing. They don't have enough information to do that, right? So that's a tough one to do. Economists are pretty much against those price controls that way, of price ceilings, because they end up just being a mess. Once the market changes, it's all screwed up. So this zero profit thing is about the more likely one that we'll attempt to do. Okay, see you on Wednesday.
Didn't you just give subsidies to people for creating, like, there is a substitution market, but it's very small and minimal,
Yeah.
enough to make a difference, so you could provide a subsidy to those individuals who have
To possibly compete with them?
not to compete,
Oh.
but like put a solar panel on and you get a subsidy from the government for,
Yeah, that's right.
like, subsidy. Yeah.
You're right. They can subsidize that.
Because if I had $1,500, I'd definitely slap it on my house.
Right. And then, so some of the issues, that's kind of a long question that we will study that, by the way, when we start to get into externalities. So you're bringing up some stuff that we will talk about later, really fun stuff. So keep that in mind. But the government ends up picking winners and losers. And again, and we're back to the politicians. How can they know that solar power is the best use of society's resources?
Well,
They don't. It's usually
best, but it's better than that.
Well, that's debatable, depending on all of the circumstances. It's easy on the whiteboard to look at it, but if we have that going on, do we encourage substitutes? Well, if we can regulate it and energy's cheap because we're using coal and there's not an issue with the environment, you see how many things I'm layering on potentially, solar being cleaner and all that, it's hard to pick those winners and losers. But they sure attempt to, and we will talk more about that. That's good stuff.
My phone always is really hot in this class. Okay. On my midterm.
Yeah. Question?
I wrote down. It's right now 81.
Okay, why don't you dig yours out? Are you looking for a test question too, or something else? You can look for yours too.
Dang.
Are you looking for a test?
A couple questions.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and pull it out.
And then the one with the
Yeah.
bottom of that page.
I didn't do the arrows, but.
Well,
My total grade.
Okay, so
oh, those
The-
mastery points, did you see that?
the opportunity
Yeah.
cost of a coconut is what we're looking for.
More down.
So the opportunity cost of 3 fish per gen is 1 coconut. It's really the cost.
So I just.
You flip it, yeah, you flipped it around.
That's my
That was
goal.
what- okay,
Here
okay.
and A. That's like what I'm wanting to do right now.
Wouldn't the law of short term, wouldn't you,
That's not even that.
if you increase the time you spent there, it would decrease the utility? So
Right.
ideally, you would want it equal.
Ideally, you do want it equal, so you got partial credit for that. So what happens here is now when I go out and
That's the only way, yeah, that's the only way.
buy another windsurfing, the utility of that last one purchased is less. So this actually starts to fall, law of diminishing marginal utility. Because I'm actually giving up snorkeling, that sucker goes up.
Yeah.
And so that's what starts to bring us to that equalization point. So when you put increases times snorkeling, that's where you lost points. We want to do just the opposite, increase the windsurfing and less snorkeling, and that is going to drive them to equal. So you were absolutely correct with that.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, you just kind of flipped it around with which one to increase.
So,
That's a tough concept, by the way. So
on that one, you said, like, you have to say that you can't produce more without losing some.
this one here?
Yeah.
No, you can become more efficient, you can produce 33. Right, so I was wanting, and actually I only took off a half, so that didn't, well, because you had another half, I do round to the student's favor, but since you had another half there, which is awesome. Yep.
And then I had a question about my grades. So I'm sitting at like 41 right now, which is bad, but still a lot better than it was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, 41,
Yeah.
41%. Okay, so what have you not done and what are we gonna do
Because
differently?
a lot of the tests, they need to be unlocked again, and I need to tell you about that.
Okay, yeah, you did, okay, so that's where you're at, you're one of those. Yeah, that's in the cracker, so to speak. So you've got like a bunch of tests missed, right? Okay, so I'm gonna open those up and get you 80%. Yeah, you'll jump up a lot, but you need to do that. Like, email me today so I can respond and get you in the pipeline, because I don't want you falling behind on the Monopoly stuff. So I'd like you to get caught up with that stuff by, how many do you got to do? A lot? You must, 'cause it's only 16%.
Do you think that's all possible to get down to fall rate?
When's fall break?
This week. But like it's Thursday, Friday.
Are we off Thursday, Friday? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm not off. Okay, let me stop this thing.